Hello, this is Craig Mertens, President and CEO of Digital Art Solutions. Welcome to the webcast, our ongoing Conde online education program. I've got David Gross with me from Conde Systems and Sprite Wood as well. And so what we're going to be doing in today's webcast is we're going to be primarily showing, I guess kind of, for lack of a better word, things people pretend they already know. And so there's a lot of things in CorelDRAW, a very powerful program, that are actually essential for you to be successful in producing graphics. And these aren't things that you would necessarily learn on your own through School of Hard Knocks or just kind of stumbling on things. These are things that most people would have gone to graphic design school and had formalized training. So if you're a graphic designer, you would have already learned some of the things that we're talking about here in the class today. So the version of CorelDRAW that you guys are currently looking at is the CorelDRAW 2017 version. This is the newest version of CorelDRAW. This is a full version of CorelDRAW. It's not the student-teacher version. One of the things that, or the home and student, one of the things that David and I were talking about in a previous conversation is the home and student version does not have the color management system in it for doing sublimation printing. And it also is somewhat defeatured because it's not designed for commercial purposes. So when we utilize third-party add-on software, that's partly what you're going to see here today, we don't have access to those tools in the home and student version. So if you're going to be in commercial purposes, we'd like to see you in CorelDRAW 2017. If you're running Windows 10, we'd like to see you in Corel X8. If you're running Windows 7, 8, or 10, and then if you're running Corel X7, Corel X7 is very reliable in Windows 7 and 8, but Corel does not recommend running that with Windows 10. There's some issues that customers run into. It's kind of a hit or miss thing. Just depends on your system configuration. So we definitely recommend that staying within 2 versions of Corel. Now here's the deal. When you're brand new to CorelDRAW, like everybody does, you get in there and you open it up and you start mousing around and you start looking at all these menus and things, and it's overwhelming. And there's so much stuff going on. Like if you just click on the Bitmaps menu, you see all this stuff in here. What's a 3D rotate cylinder emboss? I mean, it's crazy all the stuff that's in here. Here's the good news. There's only 5 tools you have to learn how to use in CorelDRAW. 5. If you learn the 5 tools in CorelDRAW, the basic 5 tools, life is good. All that other stuff, you'll have plenty of opportunities in the future to learn those. So we're going to kind of focus on the 5 core tools. The other thing we want to talk a little bit about is setting up your workspace so that you get your workspace set up so it's more conducive to your workflow. And my workspace is set up based on my workflow, which I do a lot of vinyl graphics, a lot of rhinestone multi-decoration, a lot of just typical printing. And so I have my workspace set up for that particular exercise. We're going to show you kind of the general way of setting up your workspace so you can kind of see how that works. So what we would normally do, the first thing that we would do is, I'm going to go ahead and actually do this. Let's go ahead and close CorelDRAW, and I'm going to show you something that's kind of important. Is if you're ever in CorelDRAW and you make a change to your workspace and you don't know how to get that change back, what you can do is you can reset your workspace. And there's a really easy way to do that by holding down your F8 key on your keyboard. Just hold down your F8 key. If your keyboard is configured, you have to have the function key held down to access the function keys. You would have to be a little dexterous and hold down your function key or your F8 key. Or if you have a function lock key on your keyboard, you'd want to hold that down. So all I'm doing is holding down my F8 key and I'm clicking on Corel. And you're noticing it says, are you sure you want to overwrite the current workspace with the factory defaults? And I'm going to click on yes. This is how you restore your workspace in any version of CorelDRAW back to the very oldest versions to the factory defaults. And one of the reasons that I wanted to do, go ahead.
Real quick question. Does doing that in any way disturb the Smart Designer?
It doesn't disturb Smart Designer, but what it is going to disturb is your printer settings. And so you gotta be a little bit careful when you do that, David. So if you have very specific printer settings set up, like in your new documents, which we're going to show you that in a second, it will change that back to the defaults. But we're gonna walk them through that.
But if we have a print preset set, it doesn't disturb that.
Nope, it leaves that all alone. Now, if you kill your application data folder, then which is sometimes what Corel asks people to do if they're having problems in Corel, then that would kill all your presets. So, or if you have custom keyboard shortcuts set up, it would kill those as well.
Yeah, sometime we need to show the people how to change the defaults for the print settings.
Yep. We can actually do that right now if we want. So what we're going to do here is this is what Corel looks like the first time you open it. And one of the things, the temptation things that people are tempted to do is they'll see this thing that says choose your workspace. What I'm going to do, I have a custom toolbar here, and this is for my Smart Vector Pro vectorization software. So I'm going to drag that toolbar over here just for now, and I'm going to customize that a little bit. But just stay with the default. The default workspace for CorelDRAW is perfect. If you're working with a touchscreen like a Windows Surface, you could change the touch workspace. But I wouldn't recommend any of these other workspaces. The X6 workspace is kind of the going back in time to the old CorelDRAW X6 workspace. It's the resistance to change workspace. Why would you want to do that? The light workspace is the workspace that's designed for just minimal tools. Why would you want to deny yourself all the tools of CorelDRAW? So default is perfect. And they should name this best workspace, but they don't. They name it default. So since I'm not going to take a tour or do anything of that nature, what I am going to do is I'm going to close this welcome screen and I'm going to open a new document. And what I do next is super duper important. What I do next is going to determine the settings for new documents, and David talked a little bit about the color settings and why that's important. I'm going to have him chime in here in a second. So we can set up different presets. So let me give you an example. Let's say I have a Ricoh or Sawgrass sublimation printer. What's it, the 800 series? Is that right, David?
Yes.
That's the one the most common one. I can set up my page and my document settings specifically for that printer, but let's say I also do laser engraving. I can set up a separate page setup for my laser, or if I have a DTG printer, or if I'm doing vinyl, or maybe even desktop publishing. And so the way you would do that is, number one, you would pick your page dimensions and your orientation. So I'm just going to pick 8.5 by 11, and I'm going to choose the portrait orientation. I'm going to choose a one-page document. Could be 2 pages if I wanted to. I'm going to choose for color mode, I'm going to choose RGB. And RGB color mode is what we want to use for just about any process. And it's a little bit tricky because people look at their printers and they go, hey man, I got CMYK cartridges on my printer, I need to use CMYK. Wrong. Because your printer is an RGB device and it will translate RGB colors into the CMYK cartridges on your printer. CMYK is for offset printing with the offset printing press. So we always want to use RGB because we have a much wider gamut of available colors. And we use CMYK, it kind of limits our color choices, which is a bummer. So we want to use RGB. Rendering resolution is simply resolution for bitmap effects, not vector objects. Vector objects have no resolution because they're composed of lines. There's not dots. Bitmap graphics like photographs have dots, and so DPI, dots per inch. 300 is your maximum value, and that is for rendered effects, which are like fountain fills. The most common rendered effect in Corel is an outline, and the second one is a fountain fill. We will talk a little bit about that, so that will add some clarity for you. Preview mode, we want to hit enhance, but color settings are important. Here's the deal. This is one of the things, what I love about Conde Systems, is when you buy a printer from them, they are going to help you get all of this set up so there is no mystery. And this is an area that if you just go in here and go for it, you are going to have all kinds of trouble getting color out of your sublimation printer. This is not one of these things you're going to figure out on your own. So David taught me something. David taught me under rendering intent, I need to change this from relative colorimetric to perceptual. See if I got this right, because that changes how Corel treats out of gamut colors. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if color is not capable of being printed by the printer, this changes the way that Corel handles that, so we get better color. Is that a fair way to say it?
Consistent is probably that. Color. The relative colorimetric default setting was really a hit and miss, inconsistent, and so just not preferred.
Correct. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on OK, and Corel is going to remember these settings. I could save this as a custom preset and name it, call it Craig's Favorite if I wanted to, or Sublimation Workspace, but we're just going to save that, and here's our new document. And one of the things that you're going to do is once you have your new document, you want to set up your color palette. The default color palette, if I hover my mouse over the default color palette over here, will actually list the name of the palette, and the palette that we happen to have open is the default palette. So does that really tell us anything? No, not at all. It doesn't tell us anything. So what we do know is it's useless. And so what we're going to do is we're going to click on this little right arrow here, and we're going to go to Palette, and and we're going to say close. And I know it's a little scary because you don't have a color palette. So what we're going to do is we're going to open two different palettes that are very useful. And they're palettes that they're cousins to each other, but they're slightly different. And the two palettes we're going to open under the Window Color Palette menus. The first one we're going to open is the Pantone Matching System Solid Coated. We're going to talk about these palettes, why they're important. And then the other palette we're going to open is under Color Palettes is the Pantone GOE or GUI or Go. Everybody calls it something different. I think it's probably Go. We'll click on the Pantone Go palette. And let's talk about the differences between these palettes. This Pantone Solid Coated is your old school printer's palette. So if you're working with screen printing inks or embroidery threads or vinyls for a vinyl cutter and things of that nature, the colors that these are named are going to match the colors from that manufacturer. So if you're a screen printer and you're using Wilflex ink, Wilflex will have an ink color that will match these Pantone colors. Not all of them, but the most common ones. So for instance, Pantone 123 is commonly known as Athletic Gold, which if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, that's the Pittsburgh Steelers Gold right there. I'm not a Steelers fan, but I'd throw that out there. Okay, so that is your old school Pantone palette. And this would be great if you're doing vinyl, if you're doing screen printing, that'd be fine. But if you want a better color gamut, you want to use a more modern palette. And that's this palette right here. This is the Go palette. It's a bigger palette. It's got a wider variety of colors to it. It's got a wider gamut. The names are slightly different, but this is a really, really super bright palette. So there's good and bad. Okay, you want to hear the good? The good is you can get great colors out of that. The bad is you probably want to invest in the little Pantone swatch book, and you have to have a different swatch book for the Pantone Solid Coated than the Pantone Go. And they're not cheap. What are those, about 120 bucks now, David?
They're very expensive. So what we recommend is you buy the Pantone Solid book, print out the Go palette on a substrate, sublimate it, and then use the Pantone Solid book to find the colors you're looking for.
You guys following me? So let's say the customer says, I need Pantone 123, okay? So if you have the Pantone little color swatch book, and if you ever go to a paint store, you kind of know what that looks like. If you have the Pantone color swatch book, you know what Pantone 123 needs to look like. If you've printed out the color chart for the Pantone Go palette, you can go to that chart. Let's say you did it on a tile or a vaporware t-shirt or whatever you're printing on. You can go to that chart and say, okay, Pantone 123 from this color swatch book looks the closest to GOE 116, and then you just pick GOE 116 in your graphic, and it'll print out exactly the way it's supposed to. So that's a really good way to do it. So that's very clever, David. I never thought of doing that. I like that idea.
So instead of trying to print the numbers big enough, Craig, what you do is I have the chart organized by pages.
Mm-hmm.
So you find the color you want. You say it's on page 3, row 4, column 5. Reopen the chart you printed. Find that color, click on it, and then at the bottom right, that's the color chosen.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about printing that chart in a little bit because we have a little shortcut for doing that too, which is kind of neat. But what we do need to do is we need to set up our default colors because I'll show you something. We talked about a rendered effect. I'm just going to grab my left mouse button. I'm going to click on a rectangle here, and I'm going to drag to create a rectangle, and I'm going to color it this pink color right here, rhodamine red. It's kind of a hot pink. Okay. If I go in here and I want to make a blend of colors from, say, pink to white, I can double-click on my little paint bucket tool here, and all of my color functions open up. So all my color functions are in this little pop-up window. They're also here under your object properties. That same set of functions would be under object properties. I'm kind of partial to this window because it's got a little bit more real estate. So you'll notice everything that has to do with fill colors is here. So here you've got texture fills and like pattern fills and postscript fills and all kinds of crazy stuff in here. Bitmap fills, patterns, but here's where you have blends. So you see you have a blend, you're blending from one color to another. This is an example of a rendered fill. And this is not a vector-based fill, it's a bitmap-based fill. And so that 300 DPI setting that I chose is allowing us to print this out at full resolution. So that's a great example of a rendered fill. Now, if I want to change this color, have it blend from pink to another color, watch. If I click on the little color here and I go to the drop-down here, wow, it's back to that RGB color palette. And the reason for that is I'm still using the default Corel color palette. So watch what happens when I do this. When I come over here and I click on the little arrow and I go to Set as Default for the Pantone palette, and I just use the Pantone Solid Coated, I can do the same thing, But when I go over here to fountain fills, what's going to happen is it's going to give me the Pantone solid color palette there, which is what I want. So that's one of the reasons we set that as a default, so that your default colors are going to come up with the palette that you choose. And that could just as easily be the Pantone Go palette or the Pantone solid coated. It's really a preference on your preference on which one you're using. So we've got our default color palette up. One of the other things that we want to do is we want to get some default colors set up for our tools. And so one of the colors that people use an awful lot is black. So to me it seems like for text, a good color to have a default for black would be black. And which black do you use? Because there's all these different blacks. There's a very specific black that Digital Art Solutions recommends, and here's why we recommend it. Because all of our clip art is colored in Pantone Process Black, which is a really super dark black for screen printers. It also works well for digital printing. And so you notice if I go in here and I click on my text tool in Corel, that my black in my Corel is RGB black, and that's fine. You could leave it as RGB black. It's a good black. But if you want it to match your Digital Art Solutions clip art, you probably want to make sure you change that text tool to this Process Black. And let me show you how you do that. You just click on the text tool, you click on Process Black, you say, I would like to make that the default color for artistic text, which is a line of text, and then paragraph text, which is a block of text. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to my property bar, and I'm going to select 100 point and click on artistic text, but uncheck paragraph text, because if I want to just type in a line of text, I want it to be 100 points, which is roughly 1 inch. You can change that, it could be smaller or larger. I don't want 12 points, that's 1/8 of an inch, and that would be, to me personally, it'd be kind of annoying. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on any of my object drawing tools, and they could be the rectangle tool or the ellipse tool, it doesn't matter. I'm going to click on that tool, and then I'm going to right click on that same black, Process Black, and I'm going to set that as my default outline color for objects. That same black. And then I'm going to draw a box right here, draw a box right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and click on the proportional scaling button, because by drawing the box it lets me click on that. So that way if I type a value in here, say 2 inches, it scales it proportionally versus just the height or just the width. So those are some things I like to set up. A couple other little nuanced things that I like to do for defaults is I like to go to Tools, Options. I like to go down here to General, and on CorelDRAW Startup I usually turn the welcome screen off and have it start to a new document. If you want to continue to show the new document dialog box, you can leave that open, but I'm going to turn that off. I don't want to see the welcome screen again, and I don't really care if I ever see the tours again either, so we're going to uncheck those. A couple little subtle things that I do is I am running a very powerful monitor here. Okay, so my monitor here is 4K, and so because I'm running a 4K monitor, it's a very high resolution. So one thing that I like to do is under Nodes and Handles, change my node size to medium, so they're a little bit bigger. And in Corel 2017 it's a little different because you have different shapes for different types of nodes. So your line nodes are rectangles, and your curvature nodes or smooth nodes are circles. That's kind of neat. So that's a change I like to make. Another very subtle, but David, you'll appreciate this change because you'll have this in tech support. You'll get a tech support call on this, everybody does. If you click on power clipping, which is a very popular feature in Corel X6 or higher, when you have a power clip and you extract something for a power clip, it puts an X through the middle of the object. X is letting you know that that's a power clip object, and anything you hover over that object is going to get sucked in as a power clip. But guess what? Always include print and export. If you extract a power clip from that object, it will print an X in the middle of your graphic. It will print that. So what I recommend doing is clicking on screen only, so it doesn't print that. And actually, I don't like to see that X. I know it's power clipped. I don't need to see an X to remind me it's power clipped. I turn that off. I just don't think it's important. One other thing that I do is I go down here to customization, and I'm going to click on commands. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and add a couple of custom keyboard shortcuts. And so my laptop does not have a dedicated page up and page down key. So I can't use a real handy keyboard shortcut, which is shift page up and page down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here to the object menu. I'm going to go over to the keyboard shortcut for order. So there's one that says to front of layer, and to back of layer. So to front of layer, I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go to shortcut. I'm going to say new shortcut key, and I'm going to say shift arrow up. I'm going to assign that. Then I'm going to go over here to back of layer, highlight that, shift page down. I'm going to assign that. So now that's how you add custom keyboard shortcuts. So there you go, pretty handy. Yep, we're good. And they're all set. So here's the part that everybody misses out on. You ready? You gotta save the settings as defaults. If you don't do that, next time you open up a new document, man, it reverts back to the old one. So what we want to do is we want to go to Tools, Save Settings as Default, and then one other thing that I recommend. So David, if you talk about like your color management presets and all that, what you'll want to do is if you made those changes, you want to go to Customization and click on Workspace and say New Workspace and save this as your own custom workspace, because that way when you open Corel or you reset the workspace, you can just go back and click on your old workspace and it'll update. It saves all that data. So
Gotcha.
that's something that we think is actually really important. So we're ready to get going. So fundamental thing, pretty darn important. Bitmaps and vectors, that's actually a super duper important thing. And
By the
this
way,
is something,
Craig, under global, where you were just at is where you would set the print defaults. Go down to global, all the way to the bottom,
okay,
and printing, and just click on printing.
okay.
And that's where you choose what your default print preset is.
And you guys are going to help the client with that to get it set up for their sublimation
We
printer.
are. We are.
Yeah.
So, but this is where you would say, I don't want to ever choose it. I want it to be for my sublimation printer. So it chooses your printer, chooses all the settings related to your defaults.
Yep, perfect. Yep, and that's something I probably need to do on my end too. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. So let's talk about bitmaps and vectors. And so one of the easiest way to do that, I'm just going to open up a template real quick here. Oh, there's my little alien guy. And you guys are like, where did that come from? Okay, here's where that came from. So I'm running a supplementary program. This is what I do for a living. So I'm running a program called Smart Designer. So Smart Designer is our add-on software for CorelDRAW that we've been producing for over 20 years, and it's an industry standard program. And the best way to explain it, it's kind of like the easy button for Corel. And what I'll do in the webcast today, if I use a Smart Designer feature, I will explain that feature, and then I'll contrast the difference between the automated feature in Smart Designer and the traditional way of manually editing things in Corel, so you guys are clear on that. But what I needed was a piece of vector artwork. So I just clicked on the last used template. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to wireframe view, and this is kind of like your skeleton view. This is, you're seeing what's going on under the hood here. And one of the things you're noticing is there's a line here. Why is there a line here? There's a line here because there's text on a path. And so we have to attach the text to this path, but we don't want that path to print. And so as a result of that, we've turned off the fill pop properties for that path and the outline properties. And we notice that we have the word here on a path too. And you notice you can click on that and actually move it off the path. So this is what vector artwork looks like in wireframe view. It looks like it has an outline around it. You can actually see the nodes of the graphic, and we're actually going to go and play around with this graphic a little bit. But the advantage of vector artwork is, number one, it's really easy to recolor, because I can just click on an object here and ungroup it and recolor it. You know, if I want to change the text, I can change the text and just backspace over it, you know, and change this to Mobile. Did I say it right?
Sure.
There you go, Astronomy Club. So that's the advantage of vector artwork. And this clip art image that's right over here, this is what we call a production ready clip art image. We'll move that out of the way here. Actually, we'll do it this way. Meaning it's set up so it's already in layers. And so you see how we can break this all apart? That's vector artwork. So artwork that you get off the internet is not generally vector artwork. And it's generally what you call a bitmap. And so what we're going to do is we're going to play a game here. I'm going to move that up here. I'll show you a neat little Corel trick. If you take your graphic and you move it, and you right mouse click while you're moving it, it'll copy. That'll make a copy. You can also hit your space bar. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this graphic and I'm going to convert it to a bitmap, convert it to, and I'm going to convert it to a high-res bitmap, 300 dpi. And anti-aliasing, the best way to explain anti-aliasing is where you have two colors that come together, instead of having like just dropping off the end of the cliff with a jagged edge, it blends the edges in. That's called anti-aliasing. Creates a much smoother transition from colors to colors. So generally you want to have that. And also I can click on transparent background on this bitmap, and the white areas that are in here will be transparent. The background color will show through, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do it standard old bitmap. And we're going to click on OK. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move these around. Hold on, I'm going to group this one. We're going to group it so it's grouped. And we'll play a little 3-card Monte here. Let's see if you guys can follow me. Not. And we're going to figure out which one's the bitmap, which one's the vector. So anybody want to bet the pink slip on their car that the top one's the vector? No, of course not, because we're not really sure. Because visually from the outside, especially if we're kind of pulled back and we're not zoomed in real close, we can't really tell. But if you zoom in, you can tell. So if we zoom in on here, if that's a bitmap, that's your anti-aliasing right there. There's your jagged edges, and this is going to look worse and worse and worse the bigger it gets. It's going to be very obvious that there's jagged edges in there. Now if you go to the vector one, which is down here, you don't see any jagged edges because it's a math formula, and so it's nice, smooth, and clean. So it's definitely a lot harder to edit a bitmap graphic, but some other byproducts of a bitmap is it's resolution dependent, so the quality of the bitmap is going to be based on the resolution. So right now we're at 300 dpi. If I double this, make it 200%, it's going to be at 150 dpi. So it's just spreading those pixels out, and it's going to look more progressively worse. Now here, let's do this. Let's make a web graphic out of this. So I'm going to resample this, and we're going to say resample, and we're going to make it 1 inch by 1 inch at 72 dpi. That's a pretty typical size for a web graphic, and we're going to click on OK. Now let's zoom in. Woo-woo! How's that? So when you guys are wondering why these graphics off the internet don't print well on your sublimation printer, that's why. Because they're A, they're not vector, and B, they don't have adequate resolution for print resolution, and a lot of times they're small. If they're physically large, if you go on Google and you type in alien cartoon, and you get an image that's like 500 pixels in one direction or 1,000 pixels in one direction, it depends on the image. That'll probably print pretty well. It's the physical size of the image that gets you and the resolution. So perfect storm, you got a physically large graphic, say over 10 inches by 10 inches or maybe 6 inches by 6 inches, and you're at 300 dpi. That's awesome. You got plenty of resolution. The disaster is what you're seeing right here, 1 inch by 1 inch at 72 dpi. So one of the great benefits of vector artwork, and that's why we do all of our clip art and vector artwork, is giving our clients the ability to edit text and customize. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So 2 things that are super mega important. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of Mr. Alien here. We're going to move him out of the way. We're going to ungroup him first. And we're going to take this text here. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on this text. This is live text. The reason I can tell it's live text is because on the Corel property bar, it will tell me the name of the font. If this was not live text, it was still vector, but it wasn't an active font, it would say it's an object. So I'm actually going to convert this to not live text. And just hit Control Q, and now it's not live text anymore. It's just an object. And because it's an object, I can reshape the nodes and things of that nature, but I can never go back and change the text because it's an object. It's not live anymore. So one of the advantages of this, if it's converted to curves, is I can go in and ungroup the whole design, and I can grab my shape tool, and if I wanted to reshape this object, I can do that. So that's what you can do when it's converted to curves. You don't have the ability to do that when it's still live text. So this one right here is still live. So that one's still live. See that over there? So converting to curves is done through the object menu, convert to curves right there. So the reason I mention this is people kind of have this fallacy that if it's vector or if it's by format, they'll get an AI file from Adobe Illustrator or a PDF file, and the customer's like, oh, it's vector, it's vector. Well, just because it's vector doesn't mean it's live text. It could be vector and it's converted to curves. So the best way to find out is just to ungroup the design and click on it. That's the best way to find out. Now the other thing is on a bitmap, which I probably should have shown you, which I'm going to do that again, make that a bitmap. On a bitmap, if you do click on a bitmap, Corel will tell you in the property bar right here that it's a bitmap, or the status bar, excuse me. It'll tell you that. And also, if you go to wireframe view, you can see it's a bitmap because it'll have a gray box around the perimeter or the image itself will be gray, but it'll have a black outline box around the perimeter. That's what a bitmap looks like. So let's zoom in so you can see what's going on. So here's your bitmap, and then here's some vectors. Okay. So what we're going to do next is we're going to talk about two fundamental things that are instrumentally important when you're doing graphics in CorelDRAW. These are outlines versus contour lines. This is actually a super big deal, and you would not probably in a million years never figure this out on your own unless you went to a class, because it's just counterproductive to normal thought. It's like, why did they do it that way? Let me prove that to you. Okay, if you went in here and you were in regular enhanced view in Corel and you typed in USA, okay, that's vector, and we pick a different font. I'm going to use our famous DAS Game Day font. This is one of our Digital Art Solutions fonts. I'm just going to type in DAS Game Day. Now it's going to pop up in my font drop-down list, and once it does that, we can just select that font. There you go, USA. And I'm going to drag that up, make it a little bit bigger, and I'm going to click on red to fill it with red. Cool Corel trick, watch. Grab your shape tool right here, shape tool. You can spread out your kerning. You guys see that? Just with your shape tool. And there's little nodes here. You can click on that node right there. And can you guys still hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Okay, good. They're knocking at my door here, so I'm on the webcast. Yep. Okay. So you see what we can do by selecting that node, we can individually change the letters here without breaking it apart. And check it out. We can change the size here. Now it looks a little bit weird. You can change the size. You can even change the font just by selecting those. Or you can click on those two right there and make them hot pink if you want. So those are some of the things that you can do with the shape tool on text. So we've used two tools so far. You notice we used the pick tool to drag things. We used the shape tool to manipulate nodes and objects. We actually used the zoom tool already, so that's your third tool. And we use the text tool. So those are your four basic tools. And you know what the fifth tool you use is? The undo button. That's a real important one. And we've been using that one a lot. So when I make a change, Control Z, undo. That's a real, so if you got the pick tool, the shape tool, the zoom tool, and the text tool, and you know how to undo things, you can do some pretty slick things in Corel. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make this pink, and then we're going to put an outline on it. And we're going to go over here and just left click to make the fill color, but right click on the color to make the outline. And you can see a subtle little outline of that, just tiny little outline. And there's two ways that are, I think, convenient ways to change the width of that outline. Convenient way number one is if you go to object properties right here. Here is all the properties for that object. It says hairline outline. We could switch that to, say, 4 point. That's way number one to do it. And then way number two is to go down here and click on the little paint bucket with the object selected. I'm going to hit F4 to zoom to object. Paint bucket with the object selected, and you get the whole editing function. This is the whole enchilada for editing. So the concept here is that these are all your fill editing functions, and the little pen here, these are all your outline editing functions. So here's the thing on outlines. It's pretty kind of stick with me on this one because this is a little tricky. Outlines have properties. They have position and they have object order. And they have width. And then they also have things like style, like they can be dots. They don't have to be solid. So the width is the thickness of the outline. Right now I have it set to 4 point, but watch, if I set it so it's behind the fill instead of straddling the line here, watch what happens to it. You see how it goes behind there now? So it's not as thick. Also, I can set the position of it to be outside the outline, so it goes just to the outside. If I do that, I want to turn off behind fill. So now it's just to the outside, or it could be to the inside. And I'll show you a mistake that people make. They say, okay, inside outline, right? And then they set it behind fill and it'll disappear. Goodbye. It's there, but it's behind. So what we want to do here, and it's something that's real important, is we're going to decide what this wants to look like based on where we're going to center the outline. So I'm just going to center it. So it's right in the middle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say scale with image. And let me show you why we're going to do that. So if I click on scale with image and I make this smaller, the outline scales with the image. You guys see that? It stays the same relative thickness. If I uncheck that option and I make it smaller, it's going to start looking really crowded because the littler I get, it's still the same width and it's going to start crowding out the outline. And so scale with image is a big deal. So when Digital Art Solutions, when we make design templates, we set outlines to scale with image, and then we also set the relative position so that when clients take it from a, say, a full chest design to say like a mouse pad or a mug, they're not having the outlines look weird. That's one of our quality control things. But here's what I really wanted to show you. Now you got your vinyl cutter, right? And you're all excited because you got your vinyl cutter and you want to cut this in 2 colors. And you go to cut it. Guess what? It's not going to cut because outlines are bitmaps. They have no cutting properties. So this is something you would never, and this is a very common support question that we get, and I get emails on this fairly frequently, and our tech guys get this all the time. I got this thing all set up in CorelDRAW, and it's a 2 color, and I go to send it to my cutter, and it's only cutting the 1 color. Well, it's because outlines don't have a cut property. There's no vectors. But watch, check this out. If I click on this, and I go back up to that object menu, there's a little button that says Convert Outlines to Objects, and voila, it made that into a cut line. Now, here's the tricky part. Remember we had this set behind and we centered it, so that outline is actually behind the pink and it's centered to the pink. So it actually looks like that. Okay, now watch. Delete the pink. You got a pretty cool text effect. That's hollow there. There's nothing going on there. So you can use that function to go in, if you choose to, you can use that function to create an outline effect. You just put an outline on it and then you go over here to convert outlines to objects, and then you can just delete the original. But if you're setting this up for cutting, that's how you want to set it up. Now the other thing is you have what's called contour lines. Contour lines are a little different. So a contour line actually creates the effect that looks like a outline, but it's cuttable. It has vector properties. So let's do that. So I'm going to take good old USA here, and I'm going to go to Effects, and I'm going to go to Contour. And then we're going to pick some settings. So I can have multiple steps. So I'm going to pick 2 steps, not just a 1 color outline, a 2 color. We're going to set the distance. I'll keep that at 0.1. And then the position, outside contour, and then here's your color. And you remember we set our default colors to Pantone, so these are going to set up as Pantones. And we're going to set that to outside, and we're going to hit Apply. So there's what a contour looks like in, and we'll do 2 colors on there. That's what a contour looks like to the inside. This is what one looks like to center. And this is what one looks like to outside, which is the more normal way of doing it. And the text in the USA is still live, so you can change the text in that, and that contour will flow with it. Now let's change this down to 0.05, and I think we're going to discover that looks better. Okay, so that's in my opinion, for most printing and for most any kind of vinyl cutting, you want to use contour lines. This gives you a little bit more flexibility. And here's the other thing you can do, which is kind of neat with these. If I click on the outside and I go to Object, there's a button that says Break Contour Group Apart. You can click on that. And then the other thing you can do is you can ungroup it now, so you can get to the individual layers. So here's your layers right there. So there's all your cut layers. And so then you can do things like this. You could take that pink layer right there, and I'm holding my Shift key down to get the blue layer, and you can click on them both, and then you can hit Trim, and then you can trim one through the other, and you can create that inline outline effect so that it would look like that. So that's the other thing that you can do. So that's the better way of creating outlines, is by utilizing the contour line. Now the other thing that I want to show you is the difference between group and ungroup and break apart and combine, because this is a big deal. You still with me, David?
Yes.
Okay, so this is one that gets people tripped up all the time. So let's imagine that we had a piece of artwork that we had downloaded from the internet, and it was vector. The customer had emailed me their logo, and it was vector. And what we wanted to do is, they said, hey, listen, I want to do my logo. It's this USA thing, and I want to make one color, red, and then the other color white, and the other color blue. Okay, we're like, well, that's a good idea. Okay, so what you do here is you take this file, and it wasn't live text, it was curves. And when you break it apart, watch, because you want to get to these individual parts, there's no option to ungroup it. There just isn't, because it's combined. Watch. So use the break apart function right here on your property bar. You can right click, and you're like, oh man, where'd the center of that bad boy go? Well, it's still there, but we broke it apart. See, it's 2 objects now. So what we got to do is we got to combine it now. Select it all the way around, and then what we want to do is hit combine. And then any area that's sitting on top of another area becomes transparent. Now I can do that little move, make that blue, make that red, make that white. We can't see it, but watch. Double click on your page border right here, double click on it, go to background, pick your background color, I'll just make it gray. Tell it to not print and export the background. And there you go, now you got red, white, and blue, and you got a dark background. And that will not print. That's just for you to kind of get the lay of the land. So if you're sublimating onto like a light blue shirt and you just want to see what the colors look like, that'd be a cool way to do it, is to add the little outline to it. So that's a really important thing. So we're going to cover that one more time. Is when you break things apart, it breaks them into their component objects, and to get them back together, you have to combine them. Okay, and that has nothing to do with grouping. Grouping, if I select all this and I group it, it's a housekeeping thing. It's just so that I only have to click on part of it to move it. If I combine it, they're actually combined into one single linear object. Now, on grouped objects, there's a trick. Watch. If you hold your control key down and you click on inside of a group, you can select inside of a group without having to ungroup it. Slick, huh? That's awesome. So
it is.
Pretty great little tip, something I do all the time. You guys ready for another one? This is my favorite Corel tip of all time. You know why this is my favorite Corel tip of all time? Because I showed this to the product manager at Corel at a Corel conference 15 years ago, and this is the head engineer that develops CorelDRAW, and he didn't know it was in their software. So this is why it's my favorite. It's still in there. most people, when they transfer color from one object to another, they'll use the dropper. So you click on the dropper, you sample the color, it turns to a bucket, and then you click on the bucket. So that's what most folks do. And again, you can undo it, Control Z. But there's another trick. If you hold your Shift key down and your right mouse button, you can drag objects, color from one object to another.
Wow.
And here's another one. There's another little trick. We'll ungroup this. If this had an outline around it, and we'll thicken that outline up, make it 4 points. What you can do is you can hold your Alt key down and drag the outline color over. And ready? Shift and Alt, both. Ta-da!
Shift and Alt.
Yep, that's pretty slick, huh? So you'll see me, I use that all the time, and that's the one keyboard shortcut people go, oh, Craig, could you show me that one again? So it's real simple, really easy. All you got to do, hold down your Shift button, keep it held down. Hold down your right mouse button on your mouse while your Shift button's down, and you just drag and drop. That's it. That's all there is to it. And then Alt does the outline. So that's that. Okay, so next thing we're going to do, we're going to talk about different ways of kind of warping text, because working with text, let's face it, that's actually a pretty big part of what people do. And so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of construct a little design here. And it's not going to be anything too fancy. I'm going to open up a new document. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to type in some text. And we will type in the word Arizona, and we will grab our pick tool, and I'm going to drag it. And then one little housekeeping thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to center justify that. I'm going to hit center justify, and then I'm going to pick a font. So my recent fonts are up here. So here's my recent fonts, and we'll put that right down here. And then remember that copy trick? I'm going to move that up here. I'm going to right click, and we're going to copy it. And here's the trick. You can either grab your text tool and highlight to start typing, or you can just click on it, or there's a keyboard shortcut. You just hit Control-Shift-T, and the little text window is going to pop up. And then you can type in here, and you have a little bit more formatting options. So I'm going to type in Tempe, Arizona, because that's where we're located. So why did I center justify that? If I want to use this as a template in the future, and change this to another text, it types from the center out versus left to right. Okay, so that's why we're doing that. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a circle, and we're going to use the ellipse function in CorelDRAW to draw a circle. So I'm going to click on the ellipse function. I'm going to hold down my Shift key and my Control key, and when I start creating the circle, it will create it as a perfect circle from the center out. You guys see what I'm doing? Perfect circle from the center out. Then I'm going to grab the corner. I'm going to hold my Shift key down. I'm going to drag, and I'm going to right mouse click to make a copy. So you just click, drag, right mouse click. So that's how you make a donut. David, do you think that's really a donut?
Uh, it's promising, but no.
No. You know, the first time I had a Krispy Kreme donut was when I came out to visit you in Mobile.
Wow.
I know. That's the first time I saw red dirt, too.
Folks love their Krispy Kreme donuts.
Yeah, and I also went to the Floribama Club, which now they have a reality television show on MTV about that, apparently. So, not my scene, sorry. All right, so what we're going to do here is make this a little bit smaller. And we're going to get Tempe cooking right through here and then Arizona cooking right through here. So how we're going to do that is we're going to select the word Tempe. We're going to click on the outer circle. Could be the inner one, doesn't really make any difference. And then we're going to say fit text to path. And that attaches it to the path. And you got this little red node here, and we can drag that into position. And the red vertical line is your center points. So here's your center point on the left, and then here it is in the center of the object. So that's that. Then we're going to take Arizona, and we're going to hold our shift key down, and we're going to grab the outer part, and we're going to go fit text to path. And this is where people get kind of hung up here. They drag it down here, and it's upside down and backwards. So what we need to do is we need to mirror horizontal and then mirror vertical. And then we need to drag this guy down here a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab our shape tool in Corel. Remember how we changed the kerning? And we're going to grab our shape tool, and we're going to kern that out a little bit. And if we want to individually kern these, we can grab just the nodes for just, one letter if we want to do that. But I think that looks pretty good. But it's still just two circles in Tempe and Arizona. So what we got to do on here is we got to click on this and we got to break it off that path, break compound group apart, grab the inner circle and the outer circle. Remember that combine trick? Combine it. It means you can make it a color. I moved it to the back of the order, and then this I can put an outline or a contour line around it if I want to. I'm just going to put an outline on it, and we can thicken that outline up, and that's how you do circle text. So welcome to the world of CorelDRAW. Introducing Smart Designer Pro 2017. This is how we do it. This is how our customers do this kind of stuff. If I click over here on the Command Center, okay, this is all my Smart Designer features, 140 features in Smart Designer. And chances are, if it's something that's complicated to do, we have an automation step for doing it. And this particular one's real easy. So what we would do is we'd go over here to Effects, and then we'd click on Circle Text, and that's going to open up an actual function that's specifically for doing circle text. And then what we're going to do, we're going to pick on all of our options. So first thing we do is we'd pick if we're going to have an inner, outer circle. Do we want to combine the circles, like we did that combine function? What is the outline width? What is the color of the combined circle? What is our colors we're going to use in the graphic? What our text value is? What our fonts are? So we'll switch this font. We'll go back up to Sport Block, that's a real good DAS font in there. Sport Block right there. That's one of my favorite fonts. And then do we want it to be a circle or do we want it to be an oval? So right now it's set as a 4x4 circle. If I click on that, I can make it a 6x4 oval. But before we put that in there, let's jam some clip art in there. And so I just do a keyword search, and we can type. We'll just use this bulldog in there. He's got a cute little guy. So we'll click on him, and I can just type in keyword. And then to make that little circle text in there, we'll just hit apply. And there you go. So what I just made here was a template. And the template that I made can be edited. And what that means is I'm not limited in any way, shape, or form to, what the possibilities are here. I can go in, I can change the outline width. So if we want to change the outline width, we can do that. If we want to change the mascot, we can do that. If we want to start over, we can do that. It's really up to us. There's really no possibilities. Now, one thing I want to show you in Corel, this is a little trick. If you use your object manager, it's a real easy way to select things. Do you see that? I can select that little dude right there just using the object manager, and I can scooch him down a little bit. So let's show what a template looks like. Is that a little too close to Mississippi State for you there, David?
It looks pretty close.
All right. Well, we'll make this a high school design, and we'll change the colors, and then we'll get away from that. Okay, so what we're going to do here, this is a Smart Designer feature. We're going to go over here to what's called the Command Center, and we're going to go over here to Templates, and we are going to click on Edit Current Art as Template. And then what we're going to do, it says Edit Text right here. And then what we're going to do is where it says Arizona, we're just going to highlight Arizona, and we're going to type in Central High, and where it says State, Bulldogs. And then what we're going to do is we could change the art. We could use a different piece of art, just do a keyword search. But what I want to do is I want to modify the colors. Because here's the scoop. When you're doing sublimation printing, the colors you have picked in the design are going to be really super important to how it prints on the actual finished substrate. So David was talking about printing out a color chart and going to the chart and then recoloring to the design to the chart. That's how we do it in Smart Designer. And if the colors aren't already Pantone, we can click on to Pantone and it'll recolor them in closest match for Pantone colors. So that's another little handy thing. So if there are RGB colors or CMYK, we could do that. But you can see we got a couple production issues here. We got two different colors of burgundy, and we actually have two different colors of gray. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the burgundy I want to keep right here. I'm going to pick the gray I want to keep, and I always want to keep white. We're going to keep that. I don't care about the yellow. And we're going to have reduce checked, and we're going to do reduction, and it's going to reduce the colors. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a color swap. So we're going to swap these colors, but we're not going to use any shades. We want them to be solid. So we see where it says keep tints. Any shades in there are going to become solid. And we're going to make this purple. So we'll go down here and make this purple. There's that. And then here we're going to make that gold. It's going to be kind of obnoxious, so sit tight. Trick. Type in your Pantone number, 123. It'll go right to it. There you go. That's how we do it. So that's a template. So in our world, what we teach our customers is once you have a design done, you save this design, and then you open it up in the future, and it's a template. You don't have to recreate the wheel. You've created it once. That's your layout. That's a simple little layout. That would be great for like a little mug print. Do all kinds of fun things with that, but we only want to create it once, and then we're going to come back and modify it. We're going to change the fonts, we're going to change the clip art. It could be a different graphical element. So that's that whole concept of templates. Whether you're a smart designer owner or not, templates are a big deal. And we know a little bit about templates because we've made 25,000 of them over the last 23 years, so we've got a few of them. You'll get a chance to see that in a little bit. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about an alternative way to do arcing. And the alternative way to do arcing is to do text on a path, or excuse me, enveloping. So we'll come over here, and I'm going to type in, with David's permission, we're going to type this name of this. This is actually, we're not using the university, David. This is the city in Alabama. So we don't have licensing issues, but it's probably going to be orange and was it navy blue, or is it kind of, it's more of a navy blue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Here's what I would estimate it at, something that looks about like, maybe about like that. So here's our word. Again, I'm going to center justify it, and let's talk about enveloping here. So the way enveloping works is it creates a container, and that container, the text or the object is being formed around the container. And so if you go to the effects tool in Corel and go to envelope, and you say add new, you'll see these little nodes here. Okay, there's multiple styles of containers. The first style you see here is called straight line, and so that's what that one looks like, which is kind of cool. Then you got bell curve, which looks like this, which is kind of cool too. And then what you got is single arc. This is the most common one, and single arc is the one that looks like this. Now here's a great tip. Ready? Write this one down. Hold down your control key when you grab that top node, and the bottom node drags right along with it. So that's how you create your standard good old collegiate arc. Okay, and that's our standard old collegiate font, Game Day. So what we want to do with this is we want to create a text effect. We could use the contouring function and put some contour lines around it, or we could also use the outlining function. Just depends on how we do it. I'm going to show you the traditional way of doing this in CorelDRAW, and then I'll show you the faster way. So there's two things that we need to use in the traditional method. Thing number one is object properties, and thing number two is object manager. Because what we're going to do is we're going to copy the word Auburn on top of itself 3 additional times. So we'll have 4 layers. So if I click on Auburn and I hit Control D on my keyboard in CorelDRAW, it's going to say, hey man, what's your offset distance? Do you want it to kick up to the right and over? And I go, no, I want to put it right on top of itself. So we're going to say 0, 0, so it puts it right on top of itself. And you can't really tell there's another copy unless you look at the object manager. Because I'm going to hit Control D one more time, and you see the other copy got made, and then Control D one more time, and then there's a 4th copy. So what I'm going to do with this now is I'm going to select the second layer right here, and I'm going to give it an outline. I'm going to right-click on white, and then I'm going to go to my object properties, and I'm going to say I would like that to be a 6-point outline. So I'm just going to type in 6 points right here, and I will set it to scale with image, right like that. And then I'm going to go to my object manager, and I'm going to click on this layer right here, and I'm going to give that an orange outline. And I'm going to go to object properties, and I'm going to double the outline thickness, 12. And we're going to set that to scale with image and set that one. What, do I got the wrong one selected? Maybe. Let's see here. 12 outline, wrong color. That's probably part of it. There we go. That's a little too thick, so what we want to do is, oh, I had them all selected. No wonder. That'll do it every time. Okay, so what I want to do is just click on this, just this layer right here, and we want to thicken that outline up. So we're going to click on that guy, go to Object Properties, and we're going to give that a thickness of 12 points. And again, I want to have Scale with Image selected. So remember why I had Scale with Image selected? So that if I make it smaller, it scales. Okay? And then you guys are wondering, what is we going to do with that last layer? Here's what we're going to do with the last layer. I'm just going to click it. So I select it, and I'm going to kick it down to the right. That's going to be a shadow, and then I'm going to grab my fill tool right here, and I'm going to slide that over to a tint so it's kind of look kind of a softer blue. It'll give it an appearance of a gray. So that is your standard collegiate arc. That's how we do it. It's exactly how you do these collegiate arcs, and that's the traditional method. So true to form, you guys want to see the faster, easier, more productive way? You can always say no. Right, that's how we do it. So we're going to go over here, we're going to do the same program, and your recently used fonts are going to be in your list up here. Okay, so they're still up in there. And I'm still going to center justify it. And all my colors that I've been using, they're in my document palette, so I can go back and steal them. See that right down here? Corel's been creating these colors as I've been making the design. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an interactive feature in Smart Designer. So I'm going to go down here into the Command Center, and I'm going to click on Effects, Envelopes and Arcs. And I got all kinds of different options. Option number one is I'm going to click on Keep Proportion so it doesn't distort it, is I can just click on an effect and just automatically arc it. That's option number one. If I didn't do it that way, and I'm going to undo that real quick, and if I didn't have that Keep Proportion, it's just going to stretch it out, and to me I think it's going to look a little weird. So proportion, it makes it look a little bit more natural versus if we uncheck that, it's just a little bit more stretched out. Let's see here. We'll click on that. So you see how it's stretched out. So it's kind of a preference thing. So I kind of like to keep proportion, but it just depends on the graphic. So that's one way of doing it. But here's the other way. This is new in this new Smart Designer 2017. You have interactive enveloping right now. And so what you can do is you can do this dynamically. So if we just wanted to arc the bottom, you just click on Bottom Arc, and then you can stretch that, and it'll just do that dynamically. And if you want to kick the corners out, so you want to kick out the corners, you can do that as well. So this is all dynamic. That's all Smart Designer Pro 2017. That's all new in there. So we're going to close that, and then we're going to add that text effect to it. So I'm going to hit F4 to zoom in. We're going to close this, and this is where we start having fun. David, question for you.
Yes, sir.
Are you a fan of printing solid colors in sublimation, or are you a fan of printing blends and gradients and effects? What's your thoughts on that?
It doesn't matter to me.
The correct answer to that would have been solid colors. Do you know why? Print more ink.
They look better. Okay.
And you print a lot more ink. So one of the tricks you can do is you can create effects that look more dynamic and have lower ink consumption. And that's one of the little tricks that we show you. So here we show you a little trick here. You ready? Is if we go over here, these are live effects in Smart Design, and there's two types. Type number one is using contour lines. This is for vinyl cutting. Okay, you can use it for anything, but it's for vinyl cutting. Type number two is using outlines, and the outline ones, we're going to use the object color here. The outline ones are really dynamic. So if we click on one of these effects, we can create something that looks pretty neat. uses a little bit less ink, but also breaks up the object a little bit. This is what we call adding visual value. Now you don't have to do it that way. You could also go down here and we'll undo that. There's a little undo button. We could do it just like this. That's that same effect that I built before. And what I would do is I'd want to change one of the colors to orange and have it look a little bit different. So these are all automated. And what I like about these is that I don't have any investment in time. I click on one, and if I like it, I keep it. If I don't, I don't. I just go back. Actually like that one a lot. That one's real cool. Yeah, so these are things like if you were a graphic designer, you could learn how to do this. And I'll tell you a quickie story. I was at a trade show and I was working with the client and they had a big art department and the guy was a Corel guru. I've used CorelDRAW back to version -6 or whatever it was. He says, I know how to do all this stuff already, and so I handed him the mouse and I said, why don't you go at it? And he didn't even know where to start because like this effect probably has at least 30 automations to it. And so he's like, I just told him relax. I said, here's the deal. You don't have time to sit there and do 30 automation steps. You just want to click a button. If you don't like it, you just go over here and just click on a new one. You know, if you want to change the color here and make this orange, you get the little fill bucket here and just go grab that guy right there and then make it orange. And now it's orange. It's up to you. You don't have that big investment in time to do these. It's just a matter of, you know, how do you value your time? Do you want to sit here and click on buttons all day long, or you just want to have the software do it for you? It's up to you how you want to do it. Me, you can call it lazy. I don't think it's lazy. I think it's efficiency, because it's what you do with, you know, David will appreciate this. The most expensive thing in your business is the time between when you get the order till you get it out of your door. That's all cost to you. So if you have a lot of design time on a design, and if you really get honest with yourself about how you value your time, you know, if you're spending 2, 3, 4 hours on a design and you only have a dozen shirts or 6 shirts or even one shirt, if you're honest about how your time is valued, you're probably losing money on that. So what you want to do is you want to be productive with your graphics time. And so having supplementary tools that work with your CorelDRAW to help you to be productive with your graphics time is actually a big deal. So let me show you how to do that. This is how productive people work. So this is how we do it. So number one, what we teach our customers is there's 2 things. We teach them, thing number one is there's custom business. Custom business, it comes out of the ether, it's created from square one, it's got to come out of your head, there's no other way to do it. That's the time-consuming type of graphics, and those are the things where you best be a pretty good graphic designer or have some skills to you, because if you're not skillful, chances are you're not going to be able to create something that looks awesome. Now, if you go to graphic design school, that's different. Now, thing number 2 is what we like to affectionately call low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit is the graphics that are, you take a stock design, you change the clip art, you personalize it, you make it something unique to your customer. They're excited about it because it's unique to them, and you might only have a couple minutes invested in that. And if you don't believe me, let me show you how we do that. So you ready? So I'm in Smart Designer Pro. I'm going to go over here to Templates, and I'm going to click on Select Template. And on my system, I have something called a Platinum Elite Anthology. I know it sounds like a big word. So a Platinum Elite Anthology means we have every single one of our templates in our system back to 23 years ago when we started this business on a solid state hard drive with all the latest software installers for Smart Designer, and our people go on and they install that for you. And that's when we talk about our customers that have been with us for a long time, they've been investing in these art products as they've gone. And so they have all these different discs and things that they've downloaded. The Platinum Elite Anthology is the whole enchilada / chimichanga that's installed for you from a solid state drive. So my system looks a little bit different because it has all of our art volumes. Now, let's say you invested in just Smart Designer just by itself. If you had just Smart Designer by itself, which is not a bad way to do it, you would still have a bunch of art volumes in here. And let's go down here and go to the Smart Designer Starter Collection. Smart Designer has its own library artwork, and it's kind of a best of from all of our different graphics collections. So it's got artwork from all of our different graphics collections. But as a Conde customer, when you guys buy Smart Designer, you're going to get a couple of little extra bonus things, and we're going to give you a promo code at the end of the webcast. Why don't we do it right now? You ready? Ready for the promo code? This will be in the recording, so this will stand up for the test of time.
Yes.
The promo code that will get you an extra bonus art volume with your Conde Smart Designer order is going to be called Photo Templates. Photo Templates. That's your promo code. Photo Templates, because what we're going to give you is Photo Templates Volume 1. because these are drop-in templates. So they're designed so you can pop photos into these. And so Smart Designer will pop a photo right into the middle of these templates. So if you're sublimating, boom, use the clip art browser, grab your photo, put it right in there, it'll resize it, you can color correct it, boom, you're done. So this is a freebie that you guys are going to get as a Conde System client. You're also going to get the art volume that goes with Smart Designer, and guess what? You're also going to get Ready Art Volume 1, which is one of our most popular volumes because it has your biker graphics, it's got cartoons in it, it's got dogs and cats in it, it's got events, fishing, saltwater and freshwater, hunting, all the clip art that goes along with this, mascots, military, we got great military artwork, resort graphics. Just the PDF catalog alone for this one is exactly 300 pages. So that's not a bad little starter set. Clients of ours invest in all different things. On one end is you buy Smart Designer and you get a couple graphics volumes. On the other end, you do a Platinum Elite anthology. That's everything. And customers can invest at any different level. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do something kind of fun here. I'm going to pull up something from our campus apparel marketing system. And you'll notice right here there's a button. It says check for update. So if I click on this button right here, what it's going to do is it's going to check our website and it says, hey, there's an update for November, and I would click on that and I would say download, and it's going to install it. So what it's going to install is the following. It's going to install design templates and sales flyers. So a sales flyer looks like this. This is a sales flyer. It's got live text. We can modify that sales flyer and we can add, you can change the text. It's all live. We can change the name of the school or the group or the entity. And these templates for Campus Apparel Marketing System, every month we come out with new ones. They're done in a simple one color, a multicolor, and then a full digital version. So the one you'd utilize for sublimation would be the full digital one, the colorful one. So in 2017 we did band and orchestra, we did small businesses, we did camps, we did championship designs, we did dance and cheer, we did church-related organizations, we did class and school name designs. This is a real popular thing, this arrow theme on here. Hey Sprite, you still with us?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
Yeah, you've seen this thing around a lot, haven't you, this arrow thing? You know what that's for?
Oh yeah.
Tribal.
Um,
So it stands for your tribe. That's
oh,
how that.
okay.
Yeah, that's a customer explained that to me. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. It's arrows,
Yeah,
tribe.
that makes
So,
sense.
yeah. So here's like clubs and activities, events, family reunions, which is a popular thing. If you can cash in on family reunions, that's a good one to do. Fashion, dance and cheer, fire and police, fitness graphics, holidays. So they're coming out with new artwork every single month. And then our customers are populating this into their system. And what's neat about it, I know this sounds crazy, this particular program, there's a catalog, a hard copy catalog. And that hard copy catalog, it can be distributed to your customers. Your customers start off with 10 of these, and then people order hundreds of them. And they're all color-coded so that they have the number of colors in the design. So if you're getting designs made or maybe a transfer made, if you're sublimating them, you don't have to worry. You just print them. But if you're getting transfers made, it has the number of colors in the design so you know how to cost it. Here's like sports bars and spring break and student government and Western here. What we're going to do is we're just going to do a military graphic. So I'm going to go in here and we're just going to go down here to military. This is what we did for December. And we're just going to grab a design here. And it doesn't really matter which one. I kind of like this one. And we'll click on that. And the design opens up. And we'll go over here to edit text. And where it says mom, I'm going to highlight mom and I'm going to type in sister. And you see how sister just sits in there like that because it's inside of a container. And if we wanted to change the camo colors, we could go to change art. We could change the little anchors. We could do that. This is production ready. We can just print this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mock it up in a virtual sample. So I'm going to go to the virtual samples feature in Smart Designer. And we have a library of virtual samples that's built into the software, but what I've done is I've been adding them. And so I've just been adding all these virtual samples. I've just gone on the Sanmar website's real cool because you can hit the download button and it downloads the virtual sample to your hard drive. You can also just right click on it and copy it. And once you have it copied in your Corel Workspace, you got a little button here that says add it, and it adds it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to double click on this sweatshirt right here. And the navy design is going to pop right on there. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a little virtual sample of this. right here. I'm going to click on that, and we're going to add it. And then we're going to click on form data. I'm going to put all my company information in here, and I'm going to link it to my company logo right here. So there's my logo right there. And what we're going to do is we are going to create a proposal. And this is how our customers roll. So they create these proposals, they get them out in front of their clients, whether it's a mouse pad or a mug or a cell phone case or whatever. And every one of these templates is completely, you can modify every single part of this. Now I put a watermark on it, so we'll get rid of our thou shalt not steal watermark on there. That's how we do it. And let's zoom in here. It looks like we got a power clip in there. Power clip. So I'm going to show you something really neat here on this template. Let's go back here. This is power clipped, okay? And because it's power clipped in here, I can break this down by layer. There's a full pattern right here. So if you just want the pattern, you can extract just the pattern. And once you have that pattern, guess what you can do with it? You can power clip it into whatever you want. So right there, right click, drag and drop, power clip inside. So I always like to show people these power clips are all vector based. You can just rob the power clip out of there and boom, you're done. Now this particular one, that's already a feature in Smart Designer, so it's not the best example because you can do this in Smart Designer. If you had the word Navy here and you wanted to put a camo pattern in there, that's a feature in Smart Designer. So you can just go over here, you go to Effects, Quick Fills, and you pick your power clips patterns right here. So we'll pick this one right here, and we'll go down. Here's all your different patterns. You got chevron patterns and houndstooth. I'm probably a little bit sore with you on the houndstooth there, David. You're probably not a big fan of that one. and let's see here. We're going to go over here to bonus patterns because this is where you got digital camo. So it's just going to automatically put that in there. So you just click on it, and it's just going to put that in there. So it's a feature. So the concept is whether you're, here's the name of the game, and David, I think you can back me up on this one. All things considered equal, if everybody's selling the same general products and their pricing is competitive, what sets companies apart is their graphics capability.
Absolutely.
Graphics capability, it's your ability to get graphics. And here's the thing, not everybody's willing to invest in the proper tools to get graphics. We understand that. Everybody invests at different levels. I guarantee you, if you have a sublimation system from Conde Systems, you've got state-of-the-art training, you've got state-of-the-art equipment, you got a great company to back you up, you have wonderful consumables, you have all the tools that you need. But the one thing that we help Conde out with is on the software and training side. And that's why we're doing these webcasts. So if you can imagine being able to go to your customer every month and say, hey, listen, this is some of the new things that we've done this month, because check this out. All those catalogs, they're built right into your software. So if you come over here, you can just go to the catalog, and you can just pop this up, host this on your cloud server as a little PDF file, and you can say, hey, here's the new graphics that we did for November, right here. You just go right to it, and some of these are pretty spiffy. So right here is the full color version ones. This is the ones that you want to sublimate. So every single month, we're coming out with fresh new graphics. This is one of the very best things that we do. So it's kind of a big deal. So here's my advice to you guys. You ready? Here's my advice. 4 things. This is what I've learned after being in this business way too long in my life. There's 4 things that are your key to success. Number 1, you have to have the right tools for the job. It means you have to have the right equipment. It means that you have to have the right consumables. You have to have the right inks. You have to have all the right tools for their job, and that includes software too. And CorelDRAW is the right tool for the job, and CorelDRAW with Smart Designer is the easy button for CorelDRAW, and just gives you a much greater graphics capability, and that's what I've dedicated the last 23 years of my life to. So right tools for the job. Number 2, you got to get trained up. You got to plug into your Conde TV. You got to work with your sales reps. You've got to work with, you're all more than welcome to join us on our weekly webcasts and the webcasts that we're doing for Conde. but you got to get trained up. And the reason you got to get trained up is you got to make samples. That's the third thing. Samples are so critical. That's why if I go by David's booth at the trade show, David, you got more samples per square inch in your booth than any company in the industry. You know that?
As many as we can put in it.
Because you're trying to show people what the possibilities are. And when the best example I can give you on samples is, hey man, when we went to the dog, we went down to the PetSmart and they had the dog. At our PetSmart they have a dog rescue there, and I went down there with my wife and my daughter to make sure that we didn't come home with a dog. And so what did we come home with? A dog, because the dog came up and he licked my face and he jumped in my arms. And little Ozzy's my guy now. You know, he's 2.5 years old. He's a handful. But it's that there's no substitute for touching and feeling and experiencing a live sample. And in that case, it was a dog. And your customers are no different. If you get them a sample, if you lay a sample on somebody, and I was just talking to a customer today, and they said, you know, the problem that they're running into is that the big quote screen printer in their area that they were competing against, they're like, it's the brother-in-law syndrome. They're really tied in with the coaches. They've been there for a long time. And I said, you know, here's the thing. Those folks are real easy to compete with because they're usually pretty lazy. So if you want to be competitive, just use your sampling capability to get some samples out and do some things that are outside the norm, and get some samples out to the decision makers within your community. Give them some freebies. The local guy's not going to do that because he's just sitting on his hands and he's all fat and happy, and he's not going to do that. You get out there and hustle a little bit, and you'll be surprised at how many people will be interested in looking at your products and what you can do for them. He's like, yeah, man, that's a really good idea. And I go, yeah, I know, because I built a whole business doing that, because I used to do what you guys did before we did this whole deal. I was a manufacturer's rep in the imprinted sportswear business. Other thing. So we talked about right tools for the job, get trained up, samples, persistence. It just comes down to persistence. And when you have great looking samples, it gives you a lot of confidence, because when you show them to people, like if I show any of these graphics on this page right here, I can show any of these graphics to a customer. If I was going to try to sell the local fire department, they're going to be impressed with that. And then you feel good about yourself and you're proud of your work, and you get a chance to get an order. That's what it all comes down to. So what I want to do now is I want to stop the recorded portion of the webcast, and we will answer questions. Again, that promo code on the Conde deal, you get a free art volume as photo templates. So if you call in, you can call in to 1-800-959-7627. Use the promo code photo templates. That's exclusive promo code for Conde. Or you can visit our website at Digital Art Solutions, plural, digitalartsolutions.com. And you can fill out a request for more information if you'd like. So we're going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll open it up for questions.